So when we dream, say we play the role of ourselves in our dream. In the dream, we give ourselves consciousness. And when we're in our dream as ourselves, sometimes you wake up and you say, man, it seems so real. So when you're playing you in the dream, you think you're the real thing. You don't realize in the dream that you're just a manifestation of the real you. So when you wake up, it takes you a moment to come back to reality, because in your dream, you thought that was the real you. And so you say, well, when a person lives and dies, let's talk about that and compare it to the dream for just a minute. So when you're in the dream and you're there, and then when you wake up, as far as the dream goes, you die. But your greater consciousness, the real you, realizes, oh, that wasn't the real me. So, but according to the dream world, you died. And it takes you a moment to have this reality check. So now, at the reality where we're at, this world that we live in is actually like a dream world. It's a virtual world. And science has proven this. And so it's just a virtual electronic realm that we live in. And when we die here in the flesh, I use air quotes around the word flesh, but we return to our natural state, our greater consciousness that exists beyond our bodies. And it's the same thing. It's kind of like we're waking up again, just like in the dream. So this greater consciousness is fed to us. Our body is like an antenna that picks up our signal, just like a radio. If you have a radio, it picks up a signal, okay? It picks up your radio station. If the radio is destroyed, dies, you can have a different radio and tune it to that same station, and hey, there it is again. So now I'm starting to get my thoughts about reincarnation, and it's actually kind of sidetracking me here. But I really wanted to get into the whole life and death thing. And so in the dream state, let me just finish the dream state stuff with this. When you play the role of you in a dream, the you in the dream never lived and it never died. It just temporarily played a part of a consciousness that you gave it. The real you was outside of the dream. And so likewise in life, the real us is outside of our physical bodies. The real us is everywhere, just like the radio signal. So our bodies are tuned with to pick up our signal. And I think it's neat. You can read case after case of where maybe somebody gets a heart transplant, and maybe the person who donated the heart had a Corvette that they like to drive around. And the person who received the heart suddenly has memories of driving the Corvette. That's because that heart is tuned to that signal of the donor. And that is still out there. And that heart is a piece of flesh, in air quotes, that's tuned to that person and is picking up those that broadcast signal from that real person who died and donated their heart. So, and just real quick, because I did talk about reincarnation, so I just want to say that I am a Christian, and I very much believe in reincarnation. And I'll tell you why. Because I believe in the law of balance, and punishment for sins. And now, God is always the God of second chances, and you can be forgiven, and that's great. But there's a punishment, and that's where Christ comes in. Those who believed in Christ don't have to bear that punishment. Christ paid that price. And so while we're on the subject of punishment, I'm going to get to reincarnation. This is going somewhere. Hang on. So the term fire and brimstone is used, I think that comes from to shape metal. So if you have a blob of metal, it's worthless. It serves no purpose. But if you run it through fire and brimstone, you can turn it into a tool that will serve the master a purpose. And so hell is like this fire and brimstone, as in it's not a pleasant thing to go through. Learning never is, usually. So it's to refine a person, to help a person. And sure, is it something a person would like to avoid? Sure, but it's punishment with the purpose of correction. This fire and brimstone. Its real purpose is correction. And that's a good thing. We should have a desire to want to better ourselves. As far as like this idea of an eternity in hell, wow. I don't know exactly where that comes from. If such a, and every one of us are judged when we're done with our little life here. We're judged on everything we do, absolutely. But an eternity in hell, if that were true, and I don't believe it is, but one life, especially if it's cut short, is not enough time for such a judgment. I do believe, in just punishment for a crime. And like I said, Christ already bared that punishment. But for non-believers, it's not forever and ever being tortured, lake of fire, and all this stuff. They would serve a purpose, and that's for correction, like I said. I'm not going to ramble on about that anymore. It's just that being thrown into a lake of fire for all of eternity just does not make sense. God is always the God of second chances, and one life would be too short for such a judgment, especially if it was cut short. Sometimes people may live their first 40 years being evil and have a, come to Jesus moment. And so it's not fair if they're cut short. So anyway, so that's all I really wanted to discuss. I was just kind of wrenching on my car and had this random thought and thought I'd dictate it into my phone and probably turn it into a video. Just random thoughts about life, death. This physical world, it's frustrating when so many people think that it's all little particles bumping into each other, atomists, as we call them in our community. But it's an electric realm, and it's flat too, by the way. It's a flat electric realm. It's in a toroidal field. That's what we live in, a big toroidal field. There's water all around. We're basically a toroidal field bubble, if you will. But I'm sure, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm sure I would think that there's other lands as well, other toroidal fields, if you will. Anyway, I was just kind of wrenching on one of my cars and thinking about this and thought I'd dictate it. And if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for listening to my ramblings. Feel free to leave a comment. And as always, have a great day.